Welcome to the Dental Implant Practices Podcast, where each episode will explore how to integrate dental implants into your practice and into bone, with your host, Dr. Philip Gordon.
Welcome back to another episode of the Dental Implant Practices Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Gordon, and today it's a huge honor for me to be introducing Dr. Howard Farran. He's got his DDS and MBA and is an international lecturer on faster, easier, and more efficient dentistry. Dr. Farran received his, graduated from dental school in UMKC Dental School in 1987. He earned his MBA from Arizona State University in 1999. He also received his MAGD in 1998. He received his Diplomate of the International College of Oral Implantology in 1998. Dr. Farran has received wide recognition as being named Alumni of the Year of the University of Missouri in 1997, Arizona Public Health Dentist of the Year Award in 1995 by the Arizona Office of Dental Health, and the Arizona Award in 1989 from the Arizona State Dental Association for outstanding contributions made to the profession of dentistry efforts to fluoridate the water in Phoenix. Dr. Farran is founder and publisher of the Dental Town magazine, which is mailed to more than 120,000 dentists in 43 countries each month. Dr. Farran is also the founder of Hygiene Town, Ortho Town, and the flagship site dentaltown.com, where more than 140,000 registered dental professionals share information each day on a daily basis. Dr. Farran has also authored several dental practice management articles, multiple video series. His experience ranges from all aspects of practice management, including business planning, operations, and finance, to e-commerce, business, and internet marketing. He's also written the book People, Time, and Money, which I have bought and read, listened to on Audible, and have marked up with highlights and notes and hand out to other dentists that I know anytime I meet them. So, Dr. Farran, it's a pleasure for you to be on my show today. Thank you.
It's an honor to be on your show.
When I started my podcast this year, you were number one on my list on trying to get you on to interview. And I was so happy when you and your company said yes, but then I was immediately informed if I wanted to be on your show, there was about a 6-month wait. and your team asked, well, how soon could Dr. Farran be on your show? And I said, well, not today, tomorrow, really. There's a 0.0 minute wait to be on my show. So I really appreciate you helping me out and being on here.
Oh, it's an honor, Philip.
I was wanting to break into a couple questions here before we even get going with dentistry. I think anybody that knows you really understands that, you love your family and you love dentistry. Part of the hard thing for me in my first 7 years of dentistry has been trying to find that balance. How do you find that balance in your personal life and work life?
My father, he owned 9 restaurants, and most of my memories with my father are at his Sonic Drive-In. It was just amazing. I mean, people would always say they felt sorry for me because after 7th, 8th, 9th grade, all through high school, I would leave high school and go to Sonic, and I'd work there till, it didn't close till 11, and we didn't get out there at 11:30, and people just thought, oh my God, that was abusive and this, that. I mean, I loved going to the restaurant with my dad. And what was the alternative? To go home with my 5 sisters, where my 2 oldest sisters became Catholic nuns. So what I do, go home and do the rosary and bake cookies and watch, musicals. I mean, I just loved hanging out with my dad. And, right now, for my podcast show, I got 4 boys, Eric, Greg, Ryan, and Zach. My third, when he graduated from college, he said, Dad, your podcast sucks. I'm going to come help you on it. So he's worked with me for a year, and I've had the time of my life working with Ryan. I mean, it's just amazing. So I think the work-life balance doesn't really exist, because I think that when you own your own business, it's kind of a lifestyle, and you share that lifestyle with your family. And I'll give you some hardcore data. When you go around the United States and the world, about a quarter of all the people are in family business. Like where I grew up in Kansas, every one of my friends that became a wheat farmer, dairy farmer, cattle farmer, small grains, Milo, whatever, those farms had been in the family for 100 years. And you go to Tanzania, if you were born in Tanzania and your dad was a goat farmer and he had 1,000 goats and was crushing it, I mean, you learned goats from the time you could walk. So at 20 years old, why would you decide, well, you know what, I'm going to be a plumber? It's like, well, how do you go from 20 years of goats to a plumber? Doesn't it just make total sense? Dentistry is that way. Every time I'm in a dental school, I say, raise your hand if you got a mom, dad, uncle, cousin, someone who's a dentist, and almost a third of the hands go up. Yeah, you. What was your story?
Well, yeah, my father's a dentist, and so I still work a day in his practice.
Yeah. So like when you go to India and Brazil, I've been in dentist homes in India and Brazil and China where you can't even make this up, where there's like 25 living dentists in their family tree. I mean, it's like grandma and grandpa, all their kids, half their wives. One of the greatest dentists in the world is that dentist. Who's that one from Brazil where he was a dentist? But he started out as a lab tech for his dad, Christian Coachman. I mean, so family business. And what I learned the most from my dad is that business is business. I mean, I learned business from my dad. I loved hanging out with my dad. I mean, what would you rather do after school? Go home and hang out with your 5 sisters? And or go to Sonic and eat hamburgers and cheeseburgers and onion rings and tater tots, hang out with your dad. And instead of having 5 sisters there, you got 5 hot car hops and all these girls. I mean, it was just a time in my life. So I never was with my dad and thought, well, I'm working, looking at the clock. How many more hours till we go home? I mean, it was just life. And I loved it. And when he would take me to KAKE Channel 10, where they were looking at commercials and advertising, I was learning that. When he had to go to National Bank of Wichita on West Street and Central, I'd go with that. I was learning banking and finance. Every time he went to his accountant, Carol's accounting, I mean, and he was, showing me the difference between a statement of cash flow and a balance sheet and a P&L. I mean, I never saw it as work, and I never saw it when it began. I never saw it when it ended. And it's just life. It's a lifestyle.
No, I can relate with that. Being the son of a dentist also, I think I was dragged into my dad's office all the time, days, weekends, summers. And, at the age of 10, I actually liked the way the old polymethyl methacrylate and the eugenol smelled. And I knew how to mix up the cement on the glass slab, helping dad, cement crowns on a Saturday afternoon. But
and I can't tell you the age that my kids were numbing and extracting teeth and doing fillings and even an anterior root canal in missionary dentistry trips. I can't tell you the names of the countries because it might get some authority from Mexico to come up here and arrest me, or Tanzania. But yeah, I mean, they were. I remember when Zach was little, he goes, "Man, I wish I could give a shot." I said, "Well, Zach, let's give a shot. I mean, come on, it's not rocket science." And I changed chairs with him, and he gave the shot, and it was just great. It was just amazing.
So there's no resentment on your kids for them dad dragging them all over the planet of the earth, huh?
And what I really love the most is when they come home from classes in college, or especially business class, and they say, "Dad, I mean, in my business class, he still hasn't said one thing that I don't remember you telling me when I was 10. And a lot of them felt like they wanted to just go up there and give the lecture. It's like, oh yeah, that's what you say. I can add more to that. I mean, it's just fun.
When you are a small business owner, there is no separation, I think, between life and work. And so it's, you just got to figure out a way to make it work. And I know that's different for everybody. So,
well, as long as you're having fun and you're happy and healthy, who cares what your hours are and what your conditions are? I mean, if it works for you, just keep looking in the mirror and saying, is it making you happy and healthy? Are you having fun? If you're doing all that, I mean, who cares what it looks like to the other 7.5 billion humans around the world?
Sure. I know I've heard your story, 100 times. I feel like I could tell it. So, you graduated in 1987 and went to work for another dentist for a while, and then eventually opened up your own shop. Maybe 6 months later or a year later?
I graduated from the same dental school you did, UMKC in Kansas City in 87, May 11, 87. It took me 4 months to open up my practice, September 21, 87. And so when I was going through that for 4 months, I was really lucky. One of the earliest dental clinic corporations I'd ever even heard of was right here in Phoenix, which is a big town like Kansas City. And it's called Sunshine Dental. And they were open 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. And when I went and worked there, the one that was close to my office, they wouldn't let me look at because they didn't want me to, try to get patients or whatever. But there was one way up on completely on the other side of town. And he said, well, what hours you want to work? I said, well, you're open 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. 7 days a week. I want to do that for 4 months. And he's like, and I just loved it because when I got out of dental school, I had done like 50 fillings, 15 canals of endo, 15 units of denture. And I was doing my 4-year dental school requirements every week while there were 3 other dentists in there helping me out. There was this one dentist that worked there named Nick Gidwani. And, when I extract a tooth, I could only get the top half out, and then he'd have to come out and get the bottom half out. And in that 4 months, I mean, he saved my butt so many times on extractions. I mean, it was like after 4 months of, and I felt so safe because Nick was right there. Nick had wanted to bail me out. I mean, it was just awesome experience.
So how long between that time and you placing your first root form implant?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny to bring that up. So I got to tell you, so I'm 54, you're 35. My oldest boy is 27. So I'm 19 years older than you. And since I was a Catholic from Kansas, you're definitely old enough to be my kid. Because they started having them about 16 years old in Wichita. Back then, your dad would tell you about this, but back then, when I got out of school in 87, the people placing implants were considered quacks. When I was at UMKC, there was one oral surgeon placing them. And I mean, it was like open season on him in the lecture hall. People would call him the barbarian, the quack, and he's doing these subperiosteals and these ramus frames and sticking metal in people's jaws, and he was just a quack. And then around the country, there were dentists, oral surgeons, periodontists that started placing these, and they might have serviced like 50 people that had gone from dental cripples to having an implant retained, prosthesis fixed or removable. But when the first case went south, they would get their license taken away. I know one guy that almost died of depression and alcoholism because he went from being a very successful dentist to living in a trailer out on the edge of town because the good old boy club took his license away. So when I started, when I started with the Mish Institute, Carl Mish, got my fellowship in the Mish Institute. Got my diplomate in the International Congress of Implantology. The greatest thing about the new radiology, the new pano, is that they had an update so that when you had the pano, it said R on one side and L on the other. And we just thought that was the coolest damn thing in the world, that you could tell which was the right side and the left side. You would go in there thinking you had an inch of mandible, that you could just place anything. And then you'd flap it back and it was this little paper edge thing. And by the time you clean that mandible down to where you had a 6-7 inch wide surface, and you had no bone left. I mean, it was just crazy. It was just absolutely crazy. And so that 30 years ago, I mean, implants was pioneer. Back then, people had failures. They didn't even know, so now it's just a completely different game. I mean, when you take the fact that you got 3D radiographs, that you have surgical guides, that you're standing on the shoulders of probably 1 million failed implants over the last 50 years. I mean, now it's just, it's gone from getting your license taking away quackery to then bleeding edge. And now it's here. And I'm loving the fact that you started this podcast because, my family tree, when you go to a Farran family reunion, anybody over 65 doesn't have one tooth in their head. They're all, not only they all wear dentures, but they were wearing dentures before they got out of high school. And now the baby boomers that were spoiled rotten with all this fluoridated water and fluoridated toothpaste and preventive dentistry and the hygiene department. That's another thing, before Bob Barkley, the first time I lectured in Australia, they didn't have hygienists. That was in 1990. And Bob Barkley was his dentist. And I wish he would have, made it to YouTube. If anybody has an old VCR tape or an 8-track or whatever, we got to get that guy. But he was going around talking to dentists. They were saying, I don't have time for this hygienist perio bullshit. I'm swamped pulling teeth, making dentures. And these guys were starting dentures 2 or 3 a week. And for Bob to say, no, don't just extract teeth and do dentures and start doing, preventative disease. And so right now, when these baby boomers are retiring, when they miss the most common tooth that's going to be root canal is the first molar, the most common tooth to be crowned is the first molar, and the most common implant is the first molar. And when you go to dental conventions, they always have, a prosthodontist come in there and show all this full mouth rehab, which makes no sense because everybody in the audience, 9 out of 10 aren't going to do one full mouth rehab case in the entire year. And what I'm hoping that you do is go after the fact that so many of these young dentists, they get out of dental school, they've never placed one. Take them from 0 to 1. Teach them how to say, okay, you got out of dental school, $350,000 of student loans. You never did one implant, one Invisalign. You never did any of this stuff. Let's just go from 0 to 1. And let's take the tooth most commonly extracted in humans in the 20 richest countries, which is a maxillary first molar, because they completely miss the MB2. And let's extract a failed maxillary first molar and then walk them through 0 to 1. And that's going to be huge. It's so much harder to parachute your first time than it is 100th time. And a lot of the people listening to you right now are living in fear. And they're like, oh, I don't know. What if I place it and it goes into the sinus? And it's got to, and if you did a gazillion details, because you just can't see an implant. What kind of implant? You can't just say a surgical guide. I mean, there's 175 implant systems. There's probably 20 different surgical guide systems. I mean, there's a million ways to do it. And then what I hope you do the most is if you don't keep one eye on your patient and one eye on cost and use your God-given 3.5 pound brain noodle to drive down cost, then your patients in Kansas City aren't going to have the freedom to afford what it is you do. And that was one of the things I never liked about dentistry when I got out is everybody always talked about, I mean, only dentists. I remember the first time I went to the Pankey Institute and I listened to this lecture, I almost threw up where they were talking about, there's A patients and then B patients and then C patients. And when they got to the D patients, that was the entire Farran family reunion, half in Wichita, Kansas, half in Parsons, Kansas. And a doctor should never classify patients as A, B, C, D. They should just be patients. And if you don't bring down the cost, they don't have the freedom to afford to save their tooth. And then their dental health, forget the dental health, that's garbage. It's how the dental health affects their mental health. When they lose their teeth and they can't chew and they cover their mouth and they're not happy. And now this human's going through life, not with a kick in their step, not all happy and skip roping down the sidewalk, but they're embarrassed and their dentures are slipping or they got a space in their deal and it starts messing with their mental health and their self-esteem, all because we didn't do our job. Because we said, oh, we're just going to do Mercedes-Benzes on A patients. I mean, I know there's rich parts of Kansas City and then there's poor parts of Kansas City. And the guys that go in there and pioneer this stuff for the richest part, that's an entry-level deal. Let the rich people, I'll give you an example through time. So the Henry Ford comes out with his Model T. It was $668 and he did 10 million of them. Everybody knows that. What they don't realize is that GM is the one who slaughtered Ford and they closed down that Model T assembly line because they came out with 5 price points. The low-cost Chevy going against the Model T and for $668. Then for 100 more, you had the Pontiac and its wheels came off. And for 100 more, you had the Oldsmobile and it had it didn't have the wind up deal. It had an actual Delco spark plug, so mom didn't have to get out there and wind up her car. And then $100 more is a Buick, and it had a roof over it, which Henry Ford said on record, that's stupid. All you need is a hat and a good scarf and gloves. You don't need a roof over your car. And then the Cadillac for 100 more than the Buick, which is 100 more than the Olds, which is 100 more than the Pontiac, which is 100 more than Chevy, had a deal in there from Motorola. Guess what that was? Motorola. Rock and rolla. And people are like, are you out of your mind? You're putting a radio in a car with a roof on it. And why do the wheels need to come off? And why do you need a spark plug when you can wind up? The point I'm making is this. When you start doing implants on the rich and famous, that's an entry point. But then you start using your brain every day. How can I do this faster, more efficient, remove steps? Instead of having to do 13 things, do 12, then 11, then 9, then 8. And the cost keeps coming down. When Henry Ford started his Model T, it was $668. 10 years later and 10 million cars sold, it was down to $228. When I bought my first DVD player, it was $800 and it sucked. Now you can buy one for $35 and it's 1,000 times better. And I grew up on a Polaroid where you had to shake the thing to get it to develop. Now on my iPhone, I can take 1,000 pictures that are better than any photograph ever taken during the Apollo landing mission.
Part of what I do in my practice is what you're saying. How can I get people into more treatment more cost effectively? But that's a whole different program than like you said, just taking a dentist from 0 to 1. That's like the first step on the moon, in my opinion, in implant dentistry. And a lot of that comes down to fear, and I think lack of proper education. So what I'm trying to do is help people say, listen, anybody can do this. Let's figure out a place to get a little education, and then we just got to go for it.
Anybody can do it, but not the first time. Anybody can do it the third time or the 100th time. But if you should be the king of walking these kids out of dental school. I mean, you've been out of dental school for since 2009. You've been out 7 years. You should have the 7-year itch right now and saying, I'm gonna go in there and take these millennials that are all upset that they have $350,000 student loans, and I'm gonna do a 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever it takes, and over the shoulder, online, YouTube, podcast, whatever, and get them to go to one. But can I say one thing of what I think the major barrier to implants is right now?
Sure, absolutely.
So your last name is Gordon. Is that English?
I believe it's Scottish.
Scottish. Okay. So the English, Anglo-Saxons came from Germany, and then they came to the United Kingdom. Then they went north to Scotland. Then they jumped over to Ireland. But in 1850, they had the potato famine, and 1 million Irish people starved to death and died. And 1 million jumped in a boat and made it to America. And they were landing in 1850, 40 years before the Statue of Liberty. And the major employer at the time was textiles. And there were about 85 car companies spread out through North America and Europe, and 85 sewing machine companies. And every one of them went under because they were all making a few products for the very rich. And there was a guy from London named Singer who came over to New York City, and he realized these Irish boys just came with the shirt off their back. They don't have $50 for a sewing machine. I mean, if the sewing machine costs $50, it might as well cost $50 million. I mean, they don't have it. But if they had a sewing machine, they could get a job in a textile mill that paid $3 a week. And so he was the first one to offer installment credit. That was also the end of Henry Ford. Henry Ford demanded payment in full. General Motors when they started General Motors GMAC financing, and GMAC financing has always returned about $3 of net income for every $1 in making the car. And Singer had an average sewing machine. It wasn't even considered it was basically considered below average, but he said, I'm not going to demand $50. I'm going to eat the inventory, and I'm going to hand them out to all these Irish blokes and charge them $1 a week for 50 weeks. And he bankrupted everyone. And the biggest problem in implant dentistry is they don't look at the economic math, which is in the United States, if it costs over $1,000, I'm not talking $100,000. I'm talking about $1 million, $1,000, 90% of the time it's finance. So when you go in there and say you need an implant build up in a crown, then that's $2,000. What if it was 4 implants and an overdenture? What if it was 6 implants and a 12-unit bridge? And they just give them the price. I mean, look at ClearChoice. ClearChoice does about 18,000 arches a year in America, which isn't that much considering there's 324 million Americans. They do about 18,000 arches a year at $25,000 each. Well, if they didn't offer financing, I mean, $25,000, imagine grandma got a coupon and said, well, it's regularly $25,000, but bring in this $1,000 off coupon and it's $24,000. Hell, I don't care if they gave a $10,000. If you don't have 25, you don't have 15. If you don't have 15, you don't have 10. You don't even have 5. But they're geniuses of walking in there and saying, well, Philip, for just $350 a month for 60 months, you can have all your teeth, all of it. And they're just like, oh my God, I got $350 a month. And I think that that's the biggest barrier to implant success is these dentists walk in there and say, well, we could do 2 implants and an overdenture for $5,000, or we could do 4 implants and a hater bar for $10,000, or we could do 6 implants and a 12-unit bridge for $20,000. And 9 out of 10 Americans are looking at you with like a deer looking at a headlight saying, 5, 10, 20? Oh my God, where am I? Am I in Beverly Hills? Did I fall asleep and wake up in Manhattan? I thought I was in Kansas. I mean, the only way I can get 5,000 is to go get a ski mask and a gun and go hold up a bank. But if you walked in there ahead of time and on your chart, instead of asking them, well, have you ever had herpes and hepatitis and HIV and gonorrhea and syphilis? Those are questions you should ask in a bar. on a health history form in dentistry, it should be, what's your social security number? What's your address? Have you had your job for 2 years? Everything they need on the care credit, finance, or you can go next door to a bank. Those big banks, they do, oh my God, Chase and Bank of America. These guys spend millions of dollars a week on direct mail trying to get new people to get on a credit card. So if you just walk to the closest big brand, big box bank in your neighborhood and say, give me the application for a credit card. And my average case, say your average case is $2,500 or $5,000 or $7,500. Just talk to the banker and tell them what you're doing. And they'll say, oh my God, just fill out this. And if he fills out that, they can fax it to the office. And then while you're doing the x-rays, the workup or whatever, we'll approve or deny a credit card. Then you just walk in there and say, oh, you know that bank in the parking lot, Bank of America, they just approved you for a $10,000 credit card, and your treatment today is $9,500. We're going to put the whole thing on this Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase credit card, and my God, we can start today. And they're just looking at you like, oh my God, Philip, you are a singer. I mean, it was a boy from London who brought installment credit to America that gave the Irish their first break. They didn't get a break in America. They got a break from a man named Singer who gave them installment credit. And General Motors, when I got out of school, was twice as big as Ford. And Ford had the biggest lead in the world, and they blew it on financing.
Yeah, I think anytime you put anything in front of a patient, the first thing they're going to ask is how much does it cost? And if you can't have a solution for them right there, already figured out, I mean, you've already lost that conversation.
Well, yeah. I mean that when you walk on a car lot, first thing they ask you is, what kind of payment can you afford? And if you say, I can only afford $200 a month, they go show you a Ford Escort. If you say I can afford $400 a month, they go show you a Ford Taurus. If you say $500 a month, they go show you a fancy SUV. First thing a realtor asks you. Well, let's see what do you think we can get you approved for? How long have you had your job? How long has your wife had? They get the money out of the way. Then they come back and say, basically you can get about $150,000 home. And then they start looking at 150s. It'd be a waste of time to have every American, which is what happens in a dental office. They go in there and they go to the Pank Institute and the Scottsdale Center and Coyce and Ross Nash and all these elite, amazing dentists. And then they go in there and diagnose the world's most perfect Mercedes-Benz. And then you present that to this lady living in a trailer park. And she's just looking at you like, so what are you saying? I should start a meth lab like the guy 10 trailers over and start watching Breaking Bad movies and come back in a month? So just get the money out of the way. Get the money first. Get that sorted out. Then you can go into what you're going to deliver.
Yeah, because then the patients feel bad, and then patients don't accept treatment, and then the dentist feels bad, and then nobody's getting anything done. You're just preventing what could and should be. I want to touch with you about your journey into implants. I know it was a different story back then. Where did you go for your initial training?
Well, so in the earliest day, the implant was Brandmark, and he came to America, and he actually wasn't a dentist he was an orthopedic guy, and he only would lecture to oral surgeons. He wouldn't lecture to periodontists or general dentists. And then there was a guy named Carl Misch, of all places in Detroit, who must have been listening to some amazing Motown album. And he was cross-trained. He was in Prosto first. So he had mastered removable dentures. And he was starting to see these oral surgeons start doing a lot of these implant cases, and the implants were snapping. And he started and listened to them saying, "Oh, Brandmark, you're," which turned into Nobel Biocare because Brandmark is in Sweden, and they have the Nobel Peace Prize. So then Brandmark went to Nobel Peace Prize, Nobel Biocare. And Mitch started looking at these snap cases, and everybody was blaming it on Brandmark. And he's like, "Dude, you didn't get the bite, you didn't get the denture, you didn't get the forces on it were insane, and you're blaming it on a piece of titanium." And this is the advantage of cross-train. Like, dentists walk out of dental school and they've never done ortho. Well, when you go listen to these TMJ people, which is like a crazy religion, and they're talking about how this little interference does this and it causes the whole world to collapse, you're like, dude, have you ever done one ortho case? They have every interference known to man for 2 flipping years, and they all don't walk out grinding their teeth with migraines. So cross training is so important. The best receptionists used to be assistants. The best assistants have worked the front desk. The best hygienists were dental assistants before they went to hygiene school. The best prosthodontists in the world were lab technicians first. I mean, and did all their lab work. So he was cross-trained in removable, and then he started seeing all the oral surgeon failures because those guys just pulled tooth and stuck rebarb in people's jaws, and they had no idea of the final restoration. So then Mish got into that, and he just set the world on fire. When I was out in '87, I mean, he was the revolutionary guy, and so I jumped on his deal. But looking back, I jumped on it too early. I went through the Mish Institute and got my fellowship at the Mish Institute and all that stuff. But it was a long time ago, and there were still so many issues. I mean, there's been so much incremental improvement for 3 decades that it's gone from quackery to bleeding edge, and now it's prime time.
I know you're still practicing a number of days per week. Are you placing implants at all anymore, or does that not appeal to you?
I'm in a group practice, so my deal is when I have associates, I don't have any partners because I just think that when you get married, that fails half the time, and that's after having sex, children, and living with each other. So why are you going to marry a male dentist? That seems like batshit insanity. So lately, no, I have associates to do that, So, in my, the last 10 years, I've had a doctor that loves sleep apnea. So I went to all the courses and I watched him and all that stuff, but that was kind of his core comments. And I think that's very important in group. I mean, if what you really love to do is place implants and molar endo, why did you get a partner who loves implants and molar endo? I think that the dentists are 2 kinds. You're either blood and guts barbarian and you love endo and implants and extraction. You just love blood and guts. And then there's another half of the dentists that they hate that shit, and they like clean and pretty stuff. They like bleaching, bonding, veneers, Invisalign, sleep apnea, all that kind of stuff. And so I think if you're blood and guts, you should go find someone that's clean and pretty. And then, and that's a nice deal, because at the end of the day, you want what's convenient for the patient. Because when we already know that when you go when a patient goes to the doctor and he just gives them a prescription for high blood pressure, we know that grandpa won't even fill the prescription half the time. And it doesn't even dawn on the 1 million MDs that maybe if every time you write a prescription for high blood pressure, they don't even get filled half the time. Have you ever thought about dispensing it to grandpa? Just making it a little bit easier, since you only have 50 years, a half century of data that says grandpa ain't going to do it half the time. So access to care, availability, convenience is the most overlooked thing in healthcare and government. I can get a pizza delivered in 30 minutes. I could probably get anything in Phoenix delivered today, short of a nuclear bomb. But if I needed a cleaning, are you kidding me? I'd have to wait 3 weeks. And this town's got 4 million people. But if I wanted a naked lady to jump out of a cake or a pizza or Chinese or wings delivered to my house, I'll have it here in half an hour. So the only time you're standing in line waiting for something, you're at the government, at the Department of Motor Vehicle, that when I go in there after 30 years, I say, what is your address? What do you mean, what is my address? I've lived in this damn house for almost 30 years. I pay more taxes than everybody combined to this desk here. What do you mean, where the hell do I live? How do you not know where the hell I live? How do you not know that? It's government and it's healthcare. I go to the hospital about every 10 years for about 3 days, and it's always the same thing. It's always a kidney stone. Last time I was in there getting a kidney stone, I mean, every 8 hours was shift change. And then some nurse would walk in there and say, okay, what is your name? I go, what is my name? I'm naked. I got this little dress on. You got all these plastic bands on. I've been in this damn hospital for 24 hours and you're asking me what my name is? Are you freaking shitting me? Really? I mean, so government and healthcare is horrible. I mean, every other industry known to man doesn't have lines, gets it to you, has price segmentation. I mean, dentists just walk in there. You say, how much is a crown? They say 800. Was that any type of crown? Yeah, just crown, 800. Molar endo, 800. Well, do you have like a 400, a 600, 800? I believe that's bait and switch, and them are immoral people and should have their license taken away. I mean, just government. You know when one of those past presidents went in there and says, I'm going to add 100,000 more police officers to the street. It was Clinton. I was sitting there screaming, why don't you add 100,000 MBAs to government? Why don't you just pass an edict that in every government agency, 5% of them got to go get their MBA. So with dentists, most oral surgeons and orthodontists and periodontists and pedodontists, they're all worried about their turf. And that's why you walked out of dental school and didn't learn one thing about ortho, because the orthodontists are about, well, we want to protect our union. It's like, well, it's not about your union. It's about the patients. And if you can do one-stop shop, if that consumer can walk in there, the faster you can do it, the less referrals, the one-stop shop, the one appointment, faster, easier, convenient, lower price. If it's high price, it's got to be installment credit and finance. If we start treating dentistry like they do at Southwest Airlines, Walmart, Costco, IKEA, or Amazon. Did you see Amazon just delivered its first package yesterday with a drone? Did you see that?
That's exciting stuff.
I can't wait to see that drone land in the front yard and my 3 cats go after it and just get all shredded to bits while they're trying to see if their Kittles and Bits came in a drone.
Now they're going to be taking over groceries with that and all kinds of stuff. Same day delivery is it's gonna go insane. So I know you've talked to a lot of dentists in the implant field and the implant game. Who do you know out there right now that's either doing some teaching or lecturing or practicing that's really got it down as a general dentist? I mean, who's really got it nailed? Well,
I'll tell you who I'm in love with, and I'll tell you where my bias is from. Okay, my bias is this. So a hygienist works 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. She works 2,000 hours. The average cleaning is an hour, so she can clean 1,000 people twice a year. So the average dental office gets 25 new patients a month. Okay, so every 3 years, you should add another hygienist. But you come from age 25 to 65, they still only got one hygienist. So when you're a dentist from a big town like Phoenix, Dallas, Kansas City, LA, London, Tokyo, you can just piss people off your whole life. And there's always more people you can market and advertise that don't know you're too expensive, too slow, and make shitty stuff. Most of the big innovations come from really small towns. Like Walmart was from a town in Bentonville. They're the ones that took back refunds, returns. They just pushed up the supply chain. They're the ones, all these innovations. I like Justin Moody. He's at a small town. He's like North Dakota, South Dakota. I mean, once you're in a Dakota, it doesn't even matter, does it? It's just somewhere between like where real people live in Kansas City to Canada, tundra. And he's small town country boy where, if you mess up, don't fix it, don't repair it, don't do it right, you're looking at that guy at Walmart and church and the Waffle House once a week for the rest of your life. I think Justin Moody's just crushing it. I like these guys from, probably because I'm from Wichita, you're from Kansas City. I just think small town people always get it right because they can't sit there and just keep marketing and finding new victims for 40 years to come to their dental office. They got to sit there. That's what that Sam Wald did, returns. I mean, his wife Helen came back from church and said, Mary bought a pair of shoes. The heel fell off the first day. She took them back to you and you said, well, it's not your fault. You didn't make the heel. He goes, are you kidding me? That's your attitude? You give her a new pair. Then whoever that bastard is that sold you those shoes, you give it to him and you exchange it with him. And if he doesn't do it, then we're not using that shoe manufacturer. So he pushed returns, no questions asked, all the way up to the supply chain, which really, for the first time, made manufacturers saying, oh, yeah, we make 100 units a day. Well, who cares if you're getting 50 of the 100 returned? We're not making money anymore. We finally have to start making good stuff. I remember when I was a little kid, if you walk down the street in Wichita, every block you walk down, someone had their garage door open, was listening to a Royals baseball game on the AM radio while they were spending the whole day in their garage trying to get their piece of shit American Chevy, Ford, Chrysler to work. And it wasn't until the Germans started sending in these little Volkswagens and the Japanese started sending these little Datsuns that everybody laughed at until they found out that they ran for 250,000 miles without farting. And that was what made GM, Chrysler, and Ford to say, you know what, we actually have to start making real products. So competition is so good for an industry. And dentistry needs to just focus on faster, easier, higher quality, lower cost. Your goal should be every year, my entire implant crown, I should do, 5% faster and 5% lower cost. That's not dentistry. You know what dentistry and government do? Well, every time the earth goes around the sun one lap and passes the planet Uranus, we're just going to raise all of our fees 5%. And that's what dentistry was for 50 years until all these insurance companies said, you know what, we're not asking you what your fee is anymore. You raise it 5% every year when a DVD's gone from $800 to $35 and got 10 times better. You guys just all sit around working 32 hours a week, raising your prices 5% every time the earth goes around the sun, like it's based on astrology. We're going to start telling you what the fee is. When I got out of school, 95% of dentists took indemnity insurance. Now, 82% of dentists take a PPO where they're saying, buddy, I don't give a shit what your crown price is. If you want them with our insurance, here's the fee. And the dentists are still like stunned, like, really? So we have to do a crown faster and easier and lower cost? This is criminal. It's not criminal in airlines, manufacturing, grocery stores. Look at big screen TVs. These TVs are amazing at like $800. Remember when the first big screens came out? They were like $5,000, and you had to stand about 10 feet away just to see where the ball was on the football field.
I still remember the big, thick, ones that had they were square, and you had to. They were as deep as they were wide.
Yeah, they were 3 feet deep.
Yeah.
They were 3 feet deep.
And you couldn't carry the damn things because they were so front heavy. You'd fall down the stairs with them. But
I remember bringing a guy over to my house and asking him if he could cut out a hole and recess my TV and stick it out in the back. And it just turned into be, it was a stud, it was wiring, it was electrical. And finally, I realized this was just going to be just like a complete nightmare disaster. So I canceled at the very end. And now that TV's in, 2 inches thick. I want to check out the curved TV. I don't. None of my homie dentists have one. I can't go to anybody's house. There's nobody. If you're listening to this podcast, you have a curved big screen. Email me howard@dentaltown.com, because what I'm hearing is that if it's slightly curved, if you have a house with a lot of windows and lights where it's always burning out the screen, that if you have just a slight curve, but it's, that it doesn't get burned out by the light in the window or the sun or any of that stuff.
I've seen them. Yeah, I don't know much about them there, but they're still pretty expensive right now. So I got the cheap one that's been out for 20 years, and it's $200 for a 50-inch now. So
isn't that amazing?
Yeah, we've got a Nebraska Furniture Mart, and they just slaughter the competition. So
that's what we need to do in dentistry. Yeah. Why can't you be advertising in Kansas City saying, hey, you have an existing denture? Bring it in here and we'll put 2 implants underneath it. There's even an Australian. You got to get him on your podcast. So there's this guy in Australia that's really into forces like Mish was, who said, having an implant in the 2 canine areas, that's actually a lot of force. He's just putting 1 right down the middle. And he says he doesn't even want to do 2. Have you heard about that guy?
I have. I don't know. I don't remember his name. But I've thought about that. Yeah.
And it was the Australians that told the Americans that your ulcer thing you're cutting out was a bacterial infection. And we looked at some lady figured that out some lady physician figured that out in Australia. And she was publishing that stuff for a decade while the Americans were laughing. It took America an entire decade to say, what? I just got to give them antibiotics. And now, guess what the Australians and the Scandinavians are doing? Fecal matter transplants.
Yeah.
Where, you put these.
Too, yeah.
Yeah, you put these people on chemo and they just look at them. They're gaunt. They look like they're dead. You've wiped out 10 million trillion life forms in their gut. And it's the Australians are saying, when you're done doing all that stuff, take their brother's, sister's, mom's bowel movement, put it in a blender and repopulate that intestine. And they bounce back in a couple of days. And the Americans are still saying, yeah, well, if you want a shit transplant, you'll have to go to Australia. It's like, dude, listen to Australia. I think this 1 implant deal, we need to track that guy down and start looking into that, because it's faster, it's easier, it's lower cost.
You don't have to have as much bone, and a lot of reasons why it works. I'd still rather be the donor of the fecal than the recipient. But, I have heard about that. Yeah. No, it's true. I've seen a lot of those 2 canine cases, and the denture just rocks. I try to tell everybody 4, and if they can't do 4 and they want to price it at 2, I go ahead and put in 1 or 2 more just so I'm happy.
So now I got a question for you. Back in the day, the whole argument of mini implants is that they had a denture, they didn't have all the money for the big stuff, so it was just like the difference between going to a sit down Mexican restaurant where you get 2 tacos for $5, or going to Taco Bell and getting 2 tacos for $1. It was kind of like minis were Taco Bell and root forms were a sit down Mexican restaurant. But now the price of implants have gone so low, you really don't even have a economic reason to go to minis. So my question to you is, are you doing any minis, or do you just say the root forms are so low cost, you just put a regular root form in there?
Right now I'm not doing minis, and I'm fairly progressive, but I've seen some of those fail, and I know that costs of regular implants are coming down, and even the size of implants are coming down. I mean, I know you can get small implant, you can get a 3.5, you can get a 3.0 even. I don't think you're supposed to attach them to the dentures specifically, but I haven't gone down the mini road, and I don't know if I'm going to, but that's just not where my passion lies. So,
well, back in the day when I got to school, I mean, you could get a mini for under 100, and a root form was over 500. So there was a huge economic difference, and now that economic difference is gone.
Yeah, and I know.
3M just stopped their mini implant. Do you know why? I can't get anybody to tell me why 3M dropped MTech.
I haven't, and I had some old patients that I inherited kicking around MTech parts, and I was trying to track them down, and I'm not sure why. I'm definitely keeping my ear to the ground, but I'm curious on that myself.
I'll tell you what. If they close down MTech and it's just over, there's going to be a huge business in there for people buying parts to servicing MTechs and the attachments and the O-rings and all that stuff.
Yeah, because there's a lot of that floating around. I know.
Yeah.
I haven't gone down the mini train, and exactly like you said. Now I know you can get implants for $100 or $200 or I guess $550. It really just kind of depends what you want to place. But yeah, I know I haven't gone down that road. But most of the implants I'm getting now in my practice are for these full arch cases with people coming in and either near dentures or having dentures and want a better option. And we do have a clear choice in town, but they're even coming in saying they're too expensive. Can you do it all in one shop, and can you get it better for me on price? And so
what dentists are still not doing is they just can't learn basic economic principles going back from the days of Ford, Henry Ford, and GM. You still have dentists and implants saying, well, what you need is this all on Ford. It's $25,000. Okay, I get it. It's called a Mercedes-Benz. But what's your next lower price point? What's your $15,000 option? What's your $7,500 option? And what's your $2,500 option? And dentists are in this mindset. Well, the religious church of dentistry I went to, this is the only way we'll do it. And they just sell one thing. And another thing is amazing is a lot of dentists are still doing the high-low, where they say, well, you could do it this way for $2,500, or you could do it this way for $5,000. And the bottom line is, if you put a third one in there, so more men always go low, more women always go high. But when you put a middle one in there, everybody goes to the middle. So it's like, dude, you can't sit there and say your options were $2,500 or $5,000. Say $2,500, $5,000, $10,000, then everyone will do the 5. So that's the one thing dentistry doesn't really cover in dental school is economics, finance, managerial economics, financial accounting. Every dentist, every lawyer, every physician, and the whole damn government could all be a little more served just by paying just a little more attention to economics than to their bonding agent. And that's why I can't even read bonding literature, because I think you have to be an arrogant dentist to even read bonding literature. Okay, so let me get this right. So I'm a dentist. I'm a monkey without a tail sitting in my office, and here's 3M and Ivoclar, which each have like 75 PhD scientists. And when they design something, like 75 guys will spend $5 million in 5 years to come out with this bottle of glue. So I'm so arrogant, I have to start second guessing if they did it right, and going to other lectures of dentists who couldn't even do one organic chemistry question on the blackboard, but they're telling you which one's better, which one's worse, and they're just farting out their mouth. They have no idea what they're talking about. My idea is if the lady from Benco comes in and says, well, here's the shit from 3M and here's the shit from Ivoclar, I'm humble enough to say, I assume it works. I imagine if I ran 75 PhDs for 5 years, blew through $5 million to make a bottle of glue, and it didn't work, I'm pretty sure they'd hang my ass out to dry. And I mean, God, you have to be arrogant to start second guessing these big companies. I mean, when these guys do $1 billion a year in sales, I think you have more things to worry about than if they did their job right. I'm pretty sure they did their job right, and you should start looking at the man in the mirror and spend more time trying to do your job right. It's like everybody who backseats the government. It's like they're always want to rule the world, and it's 1,000 times easier to rule the world than rule your own life. It's like why are you backseat driving the president and all these policies? Let's just start with your home, your job, your kid, your business. Like the reason they want to spend so much time focusing on Washington, D.C. is because their own world is just a tornado of insanity. And if everybody would spend more time focusing on the politics of the man in the mirror, not the man in Washington, D.C. or Moscow or Beijing, just worry about your own game.
I couldn't agree more, and for multiple reasons, but that also happens to be my favorite Michael Jackson song. So,
hell yeah, Man in the Mirror.
It's always been the best. But yeah, no, I think I'm embarrassed sometimes because I feel like I'm one of the most undereducated dentists out there because the implant reps or the endo reps come in and they start talking about all the science behind it, and it's I'm vaguely remembering a lecture I heard in dental school, and I just want to know does it work? Is it going to last? Know why you'll do my patients hurt? Those are the questions I want to know.
But you know why you'll rise to the top? Harvard Business Review always does this study. They always say, okay, who are the Fortune 500? What do the leaders, the CEOs of the top 10% return on equity do differently than the bottom 10%? And Hollywood always tries to make out that the CEO is like tall, dark, and handsome, drives a Ferrari and has the hot babe and all that stuff. And it's never that's the case. The only thing they can identify is they are far more humble in the top 10% and far more arrogant. So what you just said was a source of humility. Most people aren't going to get on a podcast or a lecture and say, I don't know it all. They're going to show there are only 3 implant cases that were perfect. They're not going to show their 30 that sucked and went to court and almost had their license taken away, which is where you would learn everything. So what you just said was a glimpse of your inner soul and psyche, that you're humble. And if you're humble, you'll listen to your staff, you'll listen to your patients, you'll listen to your kids, your family, your mom, your dad, and you'll figure it all out if you're humble. But once you're arrogant, you know it all. That's the dictator's demise. They don't listen to anybody. They know everything. So they're always their own worst enemy.
Yeah, that doesn't get you anywhere. And the thing with implants is you will have failures, and the fear of those failures is, I think, what keeps a lot of people out of it. And hopefully, I just try to look at those and say, okay, what I do, how can I do this different, and who else is out there doing something better than I can, that I can copy what they're doing? Because basically, if I copy 100 of the best implant dentists in the world, I got to figure at least I'll be better off than where I started. So.
And the other thing that we all need to focus on again is that go back every 100 years in history. I mean, basically from when we were born to when Cleopatra was the queen of Egypt, that is a shorter distance than when Cleopatra was born to when they built the pyramids. So when everybody's telling you that the sky's falling and everything's so bad, just page through every 1,000 years of human history or every 100 years of human. I mean, it just gets so much better. But what you realize every 100 years back is that they were all trying to solve this problem, and they didn't know what we know today. And I'm telling you, what you're dealing with today with all the experts in the world is very partial information. You know what you know, but you don't know what you don't know. And I'll give a couple examples right now, some big, huge red flags in implant dentistry. It seems like all the dentists I know that have placed over 10,000 implants say that all the drawing blood and spinning platelets and all that is just horseshit bullshit. They don't care if the patient smokes or doesn't, and they've never used a surgical guide. So if you need training wheels on your bicycle, go get it. And then all the young people are like, oh no, you always need training wheels. You always need surgical guide. You got to draw blood and spin all this platelets when you don't really have any research. But I understand the limits of evidence-based research because we just had it handed to us on our ass from the New York Times about flossing. And the bottom line is there is zero research about flossing. So does flossing not work? Well, I believe it works, but there's zero research. That's the same way we are for drawing blood and centrifuging and all this noise. And a lot of the dentists think that probably 75% of the bone grafts weren't even necessary. So no one knows who's right or wrong, because the only way we'll know who's right and who's wrong is we'll have to start joining a jazzercise club and live for another 100 years. Because imagine what implant dentistry is going to look like 100 years from now. I mean, in the 30 years I've been a talking upright monkey on this planet, it's changed 10 times. Imagine a century from now how silly we're going to look.
I've seen it change just from my father's old dental practice to my new dental practice. I mean, that's just 30 years, 100 years. And I mean, we won't be doing the same thing, hopefully.
I got a project on my desk. I got on eBay when it first came out, 15 years ago. I think it was 94. And the first thing I found on eBay was some old dentist in Kentucky that was about 100 million years old was selling the first 3 books written and autographed and signed by G.V. Black. And he wanted bank for them. And I wanted to read those books because I wanted to go back and read the own words of the biggest guy in dentistry 1 century ago. And I mean, I didn't know whether I should laugh or cry. I mean, my God, they were trephinating into jaws to let the evil spirits out. Wow. I mean, is that amazing? And then the bugs, which they didn't know, the bugs, they all were drawn out and they all looked like the little court jesters for the king. They all had funny hats and pointy shoes and little bells on the end of their feet. And these were the evil spirits at the end of the root that they were trephinating holes in to let them out. And you're like, yeah, a little bit's changed since then.
Yeah. Yeah. And that change is coming faster and faster with obviously technology. Implant dentistry, I feel like even that's changed in the past 10 years rapidly since, or even the last 7 since I've been out of dental school. So I'm definitely excited to see where it's going. How do you think I can best help other dentists go from that 0 to 1 that you talked about?
Well, humans live in fear. Mm-hmm. And, the Greeks said there was 2 emotions. There was greed and fear. And we know that fear is 100 times bigger than greed because look at the 10 biggest plummets on Wall Street, single day plummets versus the 10 biggest single day gains. I remember when I got out of school in 87, I got out May of 87, October, we had Black Monday. I mean, it just plummeted, one day. Imagine you're in the Serengeti 2 million years ago, and you're a new human, and you're so thirsty, fear, you're going to starve to death. You need water, but you're looking at that little pond, and there's 3 crocodiles looking right at you, and they're each 12 feet long. And you're just a little 3-foot human being sitting in a tree. So greed is far lower than fear. Fear is the dominating emotion, and they're just afraid. So it just needs to be ad nauseum spelled out in ad nauseum detail. People will say, well, you want to get a root form implant. Dude, there's 175 brands. And then you want to put on your drill bit. Dude, which drill? Just spell it out. But no one wants to. There's no ego in showing someone how to do a DO composite or an MOD composite. All the speakers in America, probably 90% of them I should write a prescription for 2 testicles because they want to go out there and show this one super amazing case where they placed 400 implants and did full mouth reconstruction and all this stuff. And they're just showing off because they come from the little wiener syndrome where they're driving the Ford 4-wheel drive pickup that's 6 feet off the ground. Show them how to do just an MOD composite. Show them how to place one. The most common, maxillary first molar. Name the implant. Name the system. Spell out every damn detail. And maybe every step of the way, give them 3 options. Like, okay, I use this implant system, but these 3 would work. I use this surgical guide, but you could do it, or whatever. and then keep one eye on the cost because they already got $350,000 student loans. So if your answer is, well, first buy $100,000 CVCT, then spend $50,000 and go to the Dominican Republic with Erngurg, and then buy a $50,000 kit. And what I want you to do is I want you to invest $250,000 more dollars before you get a penny back. They're like, you know what, Philip, I'm just going to go start selling drugs.
Taking drugs.
Yeah, selling it and taking it. And so just make it easier, faster. Yeah. You know, I mean, another one, my favorite podcast from you was that Corey Glenn.
Oh, yeah.
And that's another classic example. Where's he from? Beverly Hills? Key Biscayne? He's from the rich state of what? Tennessee?
Tennessee, yeah. And he's not even in the big city in Tennessee.
I know. I mean, there's probably a 50% chance he's married to his first cousin. And so he's got to squeeze every cost out. I love people like that. I love Corey Glenn because the penny was discovered. Copper wire was discovered when two Scots were fighting over a penny and, squeeze all the cost out. Get it? They're pulling on a copper penny and they made wire. That joke wasn't very good, was it?
Well, I thought you were being serious for a moment. I thought, well, maybe he's got a point here because he's talking about so many fantastic things. I thought, well, no, I think this is just a.
Well, I mean, there's dentists listening to your show right now. If they walk down the street and saw a penny, a nickel, or a dime on the sidewalk, wouldn't even pick it up. They might not even pick it up until it's a quarter. But then when you go into like the grocery store industry, like Kroger, the number one seller in America is Walmart, and then it's Costco. And then it's Kroger, which is a behind the scenes owner of the biggest grocery store chains in each country, in each state. And then it's Amazon. And Kroger, their profit margin is 1%. So when you go in there and say, my God, they're so lucky. I just bought $400 of the groceries. Dude, they made $4. They made $4. Why do you think there's so much corporate dentistry going on? Because they look over and say, you mean these idiots have a 35% profit margin? Kroger has a 1% and a Bond's paying me 3%. I think I'm going to go look at these dental boys who are doing margins of 35%. I mean, you're attracting way too much attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's right now, it's just easy business for them. I mean, it's just easy picking for them. We made it too sloppy, and there's too much money sitting on the table. And I think there's finally some smart heads out there figured that out. So what would be your three best practice advice to a young dentist these days that's looking to try something new?
I would say this. If you decided you were going to open up a sit-down Mexican restaurant where 2 tacos are $5 or Taco Bell, both are going to be successful. McDonald's will be successful, so will Ruth Chris. Walmart will be successful, so will Nordstrom. So it doesn't matter which market you're going to focus on. What matters is that you keep, like my book, you only manage people, time, and money. I'd say that if 3 things, that's why I wrote my book. Number 1 is the people. If you don't understand your fellow human man so that you can lead and motivate and attract and retain great people that are going to stay with you. I still have my first dental assistant 29 years later. I have so many people that have been with me more than 2 decades. And if you can't retain your staff, you're not going to retain your patients. The only reason your patients come back is because they still want to see that same old hygienist, that same old assistant, that same old dentist. And so you got to nail the people stuff. I mean, and everybody wants to focus on like international disagreements. Like, what does the United States disagree with Russia or Syria or Afghanistan? They want to focus on that. No, you should be focusing on why you can't get along with your assistant, your hygienist, why your hygienist just cold clock punched the dental assistant, why the patient left and upset and wrote a bad review. Learn the soft stuff, the people skills. That is the most important. And congratulations on you today. Today's your 6-year wedding anniversary. Focus on that relationship. And the more you develop that relationship, that relationship will help you get along with your patients. And, things you learn from that, you apply to your 2 kids, Ben and Jack. I mean, it just focus on the people stuff. Then after people, then my book was People, Time, Money. Then go to time. What most people do is the successful people, they start the day fresh and they say, okay, before I go to bed, if I could just get one thing done today, what would it be? And then the other 99% of the earth doesn't even get to that. They'll start with checking their Facebook status and then going to get a coffee. And now it's 10 o'clock. And I mean, by the end of the day, they didn't even get anything done. So time management. I mean, and then young kids, they sit there and say, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to try to get this done next week. Dude, look, you're going to live about 75 years. On your New Year's resolutions, I say, okay, in the next year, I only want to accomplish like one or two things. And where would I want to be on this goal at the end of Q1 versus at the end of March versus Q2 at the end of June versus Q3 by the end of the year? And I've been doing this, my dental office, 29 years. If you sit out there and really take those goals seriously, say, you know what? 2017, like my 2017 goal, I don't want to say it on a podcast what it is, because it'll embarrass Ryan that his father's getting a sex change. Ryan, have I told you about this, John? And but I got like one thing I want to do. I'll actually give a little insight. It's a marketing program for my dental office, Today's Dental. But if I could just do this, so you're 54 years, like I'm so damn old. I'm just trying to get one damn thing done next year. But these kids will start 98 different projects. They'll run 38 different directions. And it's like they're in Kansas City and they spend half the day driving towards LA. And then they decide, no, I meant to go to New York. And then by evening time, they're just back where they started. The next day, they're halfway to New York. They realize, no, I should have been driving to Dallas or Chicago. I mean, they're just spinning their wheels. They don't have a plan. Learn the soft relation stuff. Manage your time. Work from the highest return on asset, the highest return on equity. Just every day. What's the biggest thing I want to accomplish? Then what's the biggest thing I want to accomplish by the end of the year? And then if I'm going to do that at the end of the year, where should I be? 3 different checkpoints, Q1, Q2, Q3 before New Year's Eve. And then the last thing is money. I mean, these guys will take a bonding agent from Ivoclar that they couldn't even read the research on this shit. And then they'll go to a Gordon Christian seminar all day where the first morning he's talking about all the wear rates of all the composites. He'll say, Healy Muller wears at 11 microns a year and Tetrick Ceram wears at 15 microns a year. Is that your problem that you're putting in composites they all wear down? And then the afternoon is all the bonding strength. Well, this one has 17 megapascals and this one has 24 megapascals. Is that your problem? You put in fillings, they all wear down and fall out? Then I go in there and say, dude, how many incoming calls did you have in the first half a year of 2016 versus 2015? Oh, I have no idea. But I'm going to go to LVI to see what Bill Dickerson thinks about which is the best bonding agent. Well, why don't you go to Washington, D.C. and start micro backseat driving the United Nations? I mean, why don't you go waste more time? So you don't know how many incoming calls came to your office. Well, what was your return on equity? No idea. They didn't know what it is. Well, what's your return on asset? I don't know. Okay, your hygienist just left, did a cleaning exam and bite wings. Did you make $9 or lose $12? I have no idea, but I think I'm going to add another hygienist. Why the hell would you want to add another hygienist if you didn't know what the first one made you? Because I just did your math, and I've just figured out that by the time you're at 7 full-time hygienists, you're bankrupt, and we close down this entire office. And then I'll say, your insurance. How many insurance are you taking? And they say, well, I know I'm taking Delta. I think I'm taking Delta and a Blue Cross Blue Shield. Dude, you're taking 12 PPOs. And the fee you've accepted from a filling goes from $100 to $200. So when you do a $200 filling, I mean, what's your overhead? Is it 65%? So that means when you're doing a $100 filling, your overhead's only 30%? Where are we losing money? I mean, basically, here's what I'll have to say about dentists. 2005, the average dentist was making about $219 a year. A decade later, they're down to $174. So every time the earth goes around the sun, the average dentist makes $4,000 a year less money. Every year, they don't get a raise. Every year, they make $4,000 less than the year before. Yet they want to spend all their time going to the greater New York to listen to what dentists who've never been trained in organic chemistry have to say about all the implant systems. Like, look at the implant system. You really think an osteocyte gives a shit if that titanium is made by Adidas or Nike or Puma? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, if it doesn't matter, the dentist will memorize it. And if it does matter, they don't have time for that stuff. So, read my book, People, Time, Money. Get on Dental Town. It's free. There's 250,000 dentists on that thing, guys like you, and sit there and be humble. Get on there instead of knowing it all. Get on there with just the assumption that maybe after 250,000 other dentists, maybe just one of them might know something more than you. And then they're afraid to post their question. They always say to me, they always come to me, well, they send me an email. It's like I have time to answer 2 million dentist questions every day. That's why I started Dental Town. And they say, well, I don't want to post it. I'm kind of embarrassed. And I say that, look, 100 billion humans have come and died before you were born. You don't know what any of them thought or said or did. And right now there's 7.5 billion alive today that you don't know. Why do you give a rat's shit what anybody thinks about what you say? You know why? Because you spend all your time wondering what other people think. Quit wondering what other people think and get on that board. Success is counterintuitive, and be transparent and get out there and say, hey, I'm at a fork in the road. Should I do this or this? And let's say it's to buy 2 practices. Well, I don't want to say my name and which practice they are. Okay, so just say one's in the Congo and one's in Vietnam. I'm sure you'll get really good information. Because if you would show the listing and show who you are and where you live and your student loan debt, if you would just be transparent and pour all that shit out, they'll all help you make a good decision. But the dentist will think that the next morning, 250,000 dentists will all get up, and while they're standing naked in the shower washing themselves, they'll be thinking, I wonder what Philip Gordon's doing today with his office decision. I wonder if he's going to go to Parsons, Kansas, or Clay Center. Everybody worries what other people think about them, when the reality is no one's thinking about you. Everybody's got their own life. They've got their own wife, their own kids, their own practice. No one today has cared one shit what the first 100 billion humans thought or did in their entire life. And every day, 150,000 Homo sapiens die every day. You only go to the funeral of the one guy you know, the one monkey you know, but you didn't go to the other 150,000. It's a bigger, imagine you have 7.5 billion cattle on a farm. When you have 7.5 billion head of cattle on a farm, 150,000 of them drop dead every day. Just focus on your own game. Get help. I was born so smart, I had to go to 9 years of college and read 1,000 college textbooks just to barely figure out what I was doing. And I used to think it was so amazing that I could read a book written by Jack Welch, who ran GE, or I could read a book of the autobiography of the founder of Microsoft, or all these Herb Kelleher started Southwest Airlines, and he's a chain-smoking alcoholic attorney who's never flown an airplane one time in his life, but he took the time to write an autobiography called Just Nuts, because they took out their meals, just nuts. And here you have a billionaire who's so loving and kinding that sits there and says, you know what, just in case there's one guy out there who wants to know what I think, and you can learn so much. All my best friends died years ago and wrote books, and they took their entire lifetime knowledge and wrote a book. And what do? They're watching the Kardashians. And then on Saturday, they're watching 3 different college football games. And then Sunday, they're watching 3 NFL games. Then Monday night, they go bowling. And Tuesday night, they go to Catholic bingo in the church basement. And all these life lessons are in all these autobiographies. And now they're all in audiobook. So if you got an hour commute to work, you could be listening to Philip Gordon's podcast. You could be listening to an audiobook. And when you come home at night, instead of watching, I don't even watch TV, whatever the hell, whatever the sitcom. People always say to me, well, you remember that episode of Seinfeld? No, I'm pretty sure I never watched Seinfeld. They'll say, remember that episode of Friends? No, I never watched one episode of Friends. People always go, I feel like saying to them, oh, well, did you memorize all the Brady Bunch issues? Let's discuss Gilligan's Island. Just tell me this. Give me the names of all the autobiographies you read last year. I can barely read all the books that got a Pulitzer Prize or got 5-star reviews on Amazon. I can't even read the nonfiction that I can read now, but you've got times to watch Gilligan's Island, the Brady Bunch, Friends, and monkeys are, I love them. I love Sapien. They're silly. They're sappy. They're sexy. I love them. I would have been born on Earth being the only sapien on Earth. what's the most amazing thing about our existence is all the monkeys in the zoo. And what's the craziest thing about our existence is all the monkeys in the zoo. It's like your patients, they come in, well, I just want you to do the very best you can as long as the insurance pays for it all. I said, well, is that the story on your house and car? I mean, who paid for your vacation? You went the very best I can do as long as Blue Cross and Blue Shield pays for it. But what if you said you didn't want to have any more kids and you wanted a vasectomy, but Blue Cross and Blue Shield only pays for a castration? You want me to just cut your nuts off because you want the very best as long as Blue Cross and Blue Shield cuts your nuts off? I mean, so Sapien is a wild, insane animal. And the older you get, the more you realize they're just comical. I mean, when you're little, you're offended and pissed off and think that's a bad monkey. And when you're 54, you're like, it's not a bad monkey. It's just a monkey. It's a talking, upright monkey that lost its tail. Have I offended all your podcast audience? At this point, your show is now over. It's dead. People are saying, I don't know what's wrong with Philip Gordon and those two Kansas boys, but I got to find another. I'm going to switch to a podcast on cooking.
I'm not sure anyone's listening anyway, so there's probably not anybody to offend. And if they're hearing this, I'm sure they've heard you before. So, yeah, the longer I practice dentistry, the more I realize, everybody's nuts. You have to expect it going into that. And
actually, I got a secret for you. I'm the only normal son of a bitch on earth. You just met the only normal guy. Everyone else is abnormal.
And there's only
you were just about to say, Howard, you look so normal.
You do, and then you start talking, and
then I open my mouth and get rid of anybody's idea that I could be smart.
So I'll end with one more question that should be easy for you. If you could send 3 people my way, or point me towards 3 different people, who do you think would be a good interview for me to look into in 2017?
Well, you like to stay focused on dental implant practices, correct?
Primarily, yeah.
Have you a podcast, Justin Moody?
Not yet, but he's on my list. Yeah, I'll definitely hit him up.
Have you done Carl Misch?
I tried, but I'm still trying to get through the front door.
Well, I'll get you through the front door.
Okay.
Email me, howard@dentaltown.com, and I'll reply back with Justin Moody, Carl Misch,
okay,
and then another, what I've been saying all along, the small town boys. You know Jerome Smith?
I know of him, and he's on my list too.
Oh, my God. Lafayette, Louisiana, placing 100 implants a month just for 3 decades. And you're in rich Dallas, and your patients got tickets to the Cowboys game, but your patients don't have the money for it. But Jerome's getting 100 a month done for 3 decades in Lafayette, where they just started selling shoes 3 days ago. I mean, and his cousin, I believe it's his sister's son, Danny Dominguez, just joined his uncle. And oh my God, that guy's got like 6 degrees. I get Danny Dominguez on. Yeah, there's 4 names, but you send me an email. I'll send you every one that I think.
That's perfect. Yeah. Those I had all those people on my, I kind of had them earmarked. I just, sometimes it's when you call up and say you're so-and-so from Leawood, Kansas, they hang up the phone on you.
Well, just email me and I'll reply.
Perfect.
And to them and you, and we'll get it going. I'll say, check out my UMKC homie from Kansas. You got to do a show.
Appreciate that. Yeah, no, those are people that are definitely killing it. And if I can glean anything from them for other people, I'll do that. So I'm gonna try to take these dentists from 0 to 1 in 2017. So I'll keep you posted on how I'm doing, and really appreciate your time here.
And then one last piece of advice I give you is that when you're in a tribe, you're in the Jim Jones religion, you all drink the purple Kool-Aid and die in Guyana, and the Americans don't realize they're Americans. And I would start going to other tribes in Germany, the UK. Like, for instance, there's an amazing guy in the UK that only does really short, fat, thick implants. So you don't have to worry about sinus lifts and inferior alveolar nerves. The Japanese. So I would go, because we'll end this podcast that everything we believe is going to look silly in 100 years and pathetic in 1,000. And 1,000 years. You know what they're going to say 1,000 years from now? Or just 100 years from now? They're going to say, back in 2016, when a human had a toothache, They would go to their local barbarian dentist. He would take a drill a hole in the top of the tooth, take copper wires, pull the guts out, rinse it with household bleach, and then smash pink rubber down into the tooth. And they did it while the person was alive. And we have proof that the human lived after the procedure. And here we think, oh, I'm an endodontist. I walk on water. I'm the greatest. My God, a cardiovascular surgeon has very limited knowledge compared to a century or a millennium from now. So since we all don't know what we're doing, and we all know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know, go to other tribes. Talk to implant guys from Italy and Sweden and Japan and Korea, and go down under. I just found out the other day that in Australia, that besides kangaroos, there's actually people walking around down there. And, so when you go to other tribes, you're more likely to get fresh thoughts.
Sure. That's great advice. Yeah, no, and there's bound to be something good and bad coming from each of those conversations that everybody can pick up and put in their own bucket to use. So, well, I'll wrap it up for you here today. Howard, definitely appreciate your time, and I'm gonna be sending you an email hopefully about all the things we talked about, and maybe ask you for a couple references. And if I ever get anything worth putting on Dental Town, I'll definitely shoot it your way.
All right, buddy. It's a huge honor, Philip, that you wanted me to be on your show.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.